I'm Luke Powery, and I'm here with Mary Jones and Rebecca Kirkland, and we are here for the Duke Centennial Oral Histories program. It is a great privilege and joy to be with both of you this afternoon. There's so much that could be asked of you both, but I think a good way to start is to give a bit of context of your family. Your mother, Mary Duke Biddle Trent Semans, was the granddaughter of Benjamin and Duke and the great-granddaughter of Washington Duke. Tell us about your family and childhood.
Go ahead.
Well, I tell you, Luke, my mother, as you know, really spent most of her life in Durham. She came to Durham from New York when she was 15 and lived with her grandmother, Sarah P. Duke, who was Ben's wife. She went on to Duke very young, about 15, and that's where she met our dad, Joe Trent. They got married and very young. She was very young. He was finished med school at Duke, University of Pennsylvania. No, he went to...
Well, he graduated from Duke.
Yes,
then
right. Then he went to University of Pennsylvania Med School.
Okay.
And his mother told him he could not get married till he had finished med school. So that's how all that transpired.
Okay.
And they lived in Durham. I was born 2 years after they were married. And they lived in Club Boulevard.
Oh, wow.
And we moved this was during the Second World War.
Okay.
We lived on a farm where we had chickens, cows, horses, pigs. Yeah, we remember those days. Our sister Barbara, who was the youngest of the four of us, she was not born until they moved off the farm to a little street called Demarius Street. We moved on to Michigan, where he did a postdoc, and he was very ill. We moved back to Durham.
Okay.
So that's kind of our childhood.
Right.
Well, I'll add.
Please do.
Please do.
Okay, so while Mary lived on Club Boulevard, the house was too small. So I was taken over to Pinecrest, which was where our grandmother lived, by the lady that helped to bring up Mother, who was with us for Mother's life and our life, and our lives. And her name was Bethy. She'll come up again, I'm sure.
She will definitely come.
But so they would bring me over to Club Boulevard during the day, and then at night I would go back to Pinecrest.
Oh, wow.
Because we didn't have enough room in Club Boulevard.
And in between Becky and me, there was Sally.
Okay.
So Sally and I lived on Club with Mother and Dad, and then you heard what happened to her.
Right. Got booted out.
That's right. Not enough room.
Not enough room.
Oh,
yeah.
my goodness. So there were four girls.
There were 4 Trent girls.
4 Trent girls. Okay, that's wonderful. Okay. What now? Also, sort of fast forward. That's some of the childhood, and I know there's a lot that could be said. I mean, let me ask this: what was it? What was your childhood like as children?
We had a great childhood.
We did.
Yeah.
We really did. There were 4 of us together.
Sure.
So we always had a playmate.
We didn't really know that we were too different from anybody else. You know.
Okay.
We went to Durham Academy, which was Calvert School at the time.
Okay.
And then we all went to College Junior High, which is no more. But,
Okay.
And So we just thought that that's what you did.
The thing, you know, one of the things that kind of made it different, though, was we were never allowed to babysit. And of course, you know, there are all the worries. We didn't know about it, but about kidnapping.
Oh.
The Lindbergh baby.
The Lindbergh baby. So we didn't really know anything about that, though. So things were a little different in that way. And we knew that our grandmother had 3 houses. That was very different.
Okay.
2 in New York and 1 right next door to us.
Okay.
So it made it just a little different, but we didn't think anything about it.
Right.
We had our friends, and we weren't allowed to walk home from school.
Oh.
No.
So how did you get
Oh,
home?
we had somebody pick us up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, one day I walked home from school,
Okay.
and I didn't tell anybody.
Uh-oh.
And I have never been so punished. So I never did that again. But you know, this was also a time when our dad was so sick
Yeah.
that, and then Mother got really occupied with that, and then going back to school. She finished her degree
Okay.
after he died.
Yeah.
And I think that those years were all colored with that. And Bethy, who was the lady that I told you lived with us, was really the stabilizing influence, and she was there all the time.
Her name was Elizabeth Gotham,
Okay.
and you'll see in the chapel, you know, some flowers are given for her every year.
Of course.
Yeah.
That's who that is.
That's who that is.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, we called her Bethy, and she actually came to be Mother's governess when Mother was little, and she lived with us until she died. So, yeah, she died in 1968. That's right.
Okay.
Yeah. Mhm.
Okay. Well, and I know, sort of fast forward a little bit past your childhood, you both attended Duke. And what was it like attending Duke University in the 1960s?
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, that's a very interesting question.
We loved Duke.
Yeah.
And we had a great time.
Right.
Yeah.
So that
We
was
did.
fun.
I loved it. That's where I met my husband.
Oh.
So, so it was great.
So I would say I lived in Bassett House,
Okay.
and Mary was in
I spent a
Brown.
lot of time in Brown House.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I think the things that were different then than now had to do with the activism that you see now that you didn't see so much then, even though it was the 60s. And although we were right there on the edge of the civil rights movement, and Duke was sort of insulated, I was really happy that it integrated in '63.
Yeah.
And I mean, Wilhelmina,
Reuben Cook.
Oh, yeah.
was eventually on the board of trustees and Duke
She was in
Endowment,
Duke
so Mary
Endowment,
got to know her too.
Okay.
But those were interesting times from that point of view, and I was glad Duke finally came along.
Yeah. You know, it was very different because there was no diversity at Duke.
Right.
It was all pretty much lily white. I think some of the grad schools before I graduated in '63,
Okay.
and that's when Wilhelmina came in that fall.
Okay. Okay.
I think that was probably that was the big thing for us, was that there was no diversity. Also, fast forward, no social media.
Yeah,
Right.
Right.
So that was a
Yes.
huge difference.
Sure.
because we got to know
Yeah.
our classmates better.
A lot of
We
FaceTime.
weren't constantly on the phone and caring about who's on Facebook, I mean,
Right.
or TikTok or whatever.
Yeah.
It
All
was
right.
most definitely a different time.
Yeah.
Definitely a different time.
Yeah.
I mean, thinking about your mother, who's legendary, and was a force for good here at the university, in Durham, the world, really. In tandem with her, both of you have made remarkable contributions to society, and professionally, civically. And with her legacy, do you feel that you had a sense of responsibility to carry on the legacy of your mother and the Duke family in terms of what you've contributed through your lives up to this point?
Well, she instilled in us
Yeah.
the sense of giving back and doing good, and I mean, she was involved in politics in Durham. You know, you have to do the things that will help get whatever you believe in forward, and she loved Duke University, and yeah, she felt an obligation, but she also felt that it was a responsibility to do something to keep it going.
Yeah, she did, and you know, she was always giving to others. She found it very hard to kind of say thank you, because she'd rather give than receive. But I agree with Becky, is that she really taught us to give to other people, give not just things, but what, you know, your life kind of. She was very interesting that way, in that she didn't spend a lot of time with us.
Oh, interesting.
Because there was Bethy for us. So she was always out. And we helped her do a lot. We would hand out flyers for her. We worked on the community chest. And so she was very involved in everything.
Right.
People loved her. She was, and the other interesting thing was that she was able to bring people together that might disagree. She talked to, they'd call her, and then she'd call somebody back, and then she'd call the other person back. Somehow she would get them on the right track.
That part is really interesting, because that was true at Duke. There was always something political going on. And so somebody would come over and visit at her home at Bivens Street and talk to her about this side of things. And she would then try to look at what the bigger picture was, not just take that and go with it. But they hoped that she would be able to either help or give some advice about how to move forward. And she was really good about seeing people and doing that. She was an adjudicator. She just, when I think about the department heads that would call her and say, we've got this kind of issue, and this is what's coming up, Mary, what do you think? And she would get involved.
And she knew everybody in Allen Building, which was very important.
Yeah.
Right.
Always.
Yes, always. As you think about her life and your own lives, you know, as her children, are there days or have there been moments when you've done something or you're involved in a certain activity and you think, oh, that's what Mother used to do? Are there certain things that you see in your own life that you say, oh, that's my mother?
Yeah, well, I think that's true. I mean, I was on the Duke Endowment for 30 years, and I didn't want to get off. 30 years is a long time. Right. And I knew that she was not going to be happy when I retired. She was dead, of course, but I knew she wasn't going to like it. So that was my my thought.
And how long was she on there?
She was on like 50 years or something.
Yeah.
Wow.
She did not like change, Luke.
Oh, okay.
She did not like change.
Okay.
And so every time there's change, we think of her and say, what would she do about this? She wouldn't like it. She didn't like to have people retire. Whenever there was a doctor or a head of a department at the medical center that retired, why are they doing that?
Yeah, she just didn't get
they
it.
feel old. They feel like they got to move on.
Right. Wow. Okay. Thank you for that perspective. Thinking about the whole sort of an entire Duke family, there's rather a unique connection between the family, the Duke family as a whole, and its connections to Duke University, still to this day. Why do you think that connection holds? Why do you think that connection is still maintained between the family and the university? And
That's a good question, because Stanford, for example, has not done that.
Right.
Exactly.
And I think, I don't know, maybe it's a Southern thing. Maybe it's because so many of your children have been here, and even those that haven't still feel that connection. It had to do with mother.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. I think that is due to our mother. Really, I do, because she connected everybody, you know, to Duke. She loved all the basketball games, so it was that kind of a thing that she liked, and she loved talking about. Eventually, she talked about her parents, her father, her grandmother, her grandfather, and Uncle Buck, and so I think Mother was the big connect.
Wow. And do you feel, as her daughters or other maybe Duke family members, feel there's a responsibility to continue that legacy?
Yes.
Yes, we do.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, just looking back, as Becky was saying about Stanford, you know, it's just too bad.
Yeah, no, it's really special here. That's my alma mater, undergrad, Stanford.
Oh,
okay.
So I know
Well, so-
exactly what you're talking
Yeah,
about.
you know.
Well, it sort of brings more heart to it. I mean, at least I feel that when your children are involved in it, they really care about it and care about seeing it continue with excellence.
Yeah.
No, it's been to see the family members pass through, or to learn, even the younger generations, not knowing who's who, all of the connections.
Right.
It's like, wow, there's Duke family members, and that legacy of presence and, you know, giving back continues. So it's inspiring in a lot of ways. As you think about the university as a whole and where it's come from, where it's going, are there particular individuals that you could speak about from the past whom you feel have made a significant impact on the university?
Her mother. Well, let me just say that the Duke women were very strong.
Okay.
My mother, her mother gave the Duke Gardens in memory of her mother. Her mother, Sarah P., was a very strong-willed Southern lady. She was the one who was married to Ben. And so I think if you go back that way, and because Washington Duke's wife died, you know, and he was left with Ben and Buck, and so they had a woman, one of the sisters took over. So there's a kind of a long line of strong women. So I think that Duke is lucky in that way.
Yes, we
women are
are.
lucky in that way.
But additional people. The one we always think about is Terry Sanford.
Terry Sanford.
Okay.
And I mean, of course, it goes without saying that President Few was to get us on the right track
Sure.
at the very beginning was
Right.
wonderful. But and I'm sure that you've probably heard about that from others who are being interviewed. But Terry Sanford had a way with the students and a way with the students and faculty that it wasn't dictatorial. It was, you know, this is the right thing to do.
Let's work together.
Work together. And it's just, he signed his letters Uncle Terry, so he wasn't
Oh, interesting.
separating himself from the students. And he, I think, made a huge difference.
Wow.
And another one, Mary and I were laughing about this because we remember what Bob Durden called the Donnybrook at Duke, when Hollis Edens and Paul Gross had their class. And what happened as a result of that changed Duke for the better.
Oh, wow.
And at that point, I don't know how much you know about this, but
Yeah,
the
go
Duke
ahead.
Endowment and the Board of Trustees had similar trustees, which was not a very great thing. My mother used to lament those days.
Okay.
But that was when the Duke Endowment broke away from the Board of Trustees, and we had different
Different board.
There was a different board.
Oh,
It did
okay.
not overlap.
Okay. And what years? When was roughly?
Six,
Oh, how is
In the
60.
60s?
It was 50. Good question.
Okay, no,
Very
that's-
good
that's fine.
question.
But in those, and
yeah.
just to come back to this, you said what Bob Durden, the conflict.
The Donnybrook.
What was that? What? Can you say something about that?
Well, the conflict
Yeah.
had a lot to do with governance.
Okay.
And so what came out of it was what Mary was
I
talking
see.
about.
I see.
But
Okay.
that was part of it. He wanted to take the university. Groth wanted to take the university in one direction, and Eden's in another.
Okay.
Although ultimately they wanted the same thing.
Yeah.
Right.
But it didn't come out well.
Right.
So House Edens, I think, resigned at that
I
point.
think that's right.
Yeah, and Paul Groth continued as, rather than being like vice president of education, became head of chemistry.
Okay.
But it was it made a big splash everywhere.
Okay.
So, and that was the point at which
Yeah.
the governance changed.
Okay. Okay.
And I think that that was important for Duke because it became its own thing at that point, and rather than always waiting for the Duke Endowment and
Okay.
checking back with the Duke Endowment for everything.
And you know, a lot of people think that Duke University and the Duke Endowment
Other things.
are the same thing.
Right.
And so it's been hard to kind of separate the two. And back then, no wonder,
Right.
because there were similar trustees on each board, on both boards.
That's right. Wow. So linked to just that's one pivotal, important historical moment in the life of in the history of the university. Are there other moments that you would say have been pivotal in Duke's history?
The sit-ins,
Okay. Mm-hmm.
that was a very big moment.
Right. And that was after you had graduated already, right? That was after?
Yes,
Yeah,
that was
that was
after.
after.
That's right. Uh-huh.
But I was still at Duke.
Okay, you were here.
And because I was here, I graduated in '64, but I was in medical school here
Oh,
until '68.
Yeah.
okay.
So the other part, I mean, that was important. But the other part that I think was important was Nan Cohan.
Oh, yeah.
One of the things that she said that really stuck with me, you know, at Radcliffe and Smith, we refer to the women as women. At Duke, why is it girls? So she...
Even when she came?
Yeah. We were all girls.
We were girls. And so she said, that is not the way it's going to be. Because they're just as serious, but it trivialized them.
Right.
And she didn't, that was not going to be happening while she was there.
And I think one thing that we don't need to leave out is the fact that from the very beginning of Duke, women were included. They were not going to give that money unless women had equal footing with men. So this was very different because no other university was doing this.
Right.
It was women and men together being educated.
Right, right. Wow, powerful. Are there other moments that stand out to you when you think about Duke? Take a step back in its history, or people, but it could be.
Well, I think once again, Nan and the East Campus, you know, became the freshman campus.
Okay.
When we were here, it was the women's campus. So that was kind of a pivotal moment too, I think.
Sure. Wow.
And another one had to do with the medical school. And of course, the medical school has always been a source of something.
Yeah.
Sometimes contention, sometimes praise, sometimes, but it was always this struggle because the medical school came to be very well known, more so than the university, and so they sort of ruled things.
Oh, okay.
But the chancellor is a chancellor higher than a president?
That's the question.
Well, there was a chancellor of the medical center, but president of the university.
Right.
So that has been changed since, but which
Right.
is interesting. But Wilbur Davison was the dean of the medical school. That was a pivotal moment for the medical school.
Okay. Okay.
And he brought along all these youngsters from Hopkins and, you know, all the, it really put the medical school on an important track.
Wow.
So I'd say that if you wanted to see pivotal moments for the university, it was also a pivotal moment that the medical center was so strong that the university came along too. And so there you go.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. They build the strengths together as it moves on. When you think about whether it's the medical side, the university, Duke as a whole, what are some of the things that you are most proud of?
Well, I think one of the things today is how Duke has handled the situation that has been going on in Gaza. I think that they kept us out of the papers, and I think that they've done a great job of that. They got great advice. I'm really happy about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think, and people have pointed that out. And I think one of the things, from my perspective, that has helped is the relationships of people behind the scenes, the intentional conversations across the various spectrums, whether it's the Center for Muslim Life or the Center for Jewish Life or administrators, ongoing conversations, which then, and including students in that as well.
Yeah, that makes a big difference.
And also trying to be proactive and constructive and not reactive, but taking, there's a new initiative, the Provost Initiative on the Middle East, which is related to all of this, but really trying to be a constructive model for the campus as a whole. And it's a challenge, but it has thus far, I think, been helpful, constructive, and a kind of Duke way from my perspective.
Yeah, I agree.
And building on that, the interdisciplinarity of departments and the communications that have to take place because of that, I think it put Duke on a trajectory that others have not been able to achieve because of that communications among departments and people and doing things together.
Right.
And that's another very different than when we were there. It was department. There wasn't any interdiscipline. So that's been a really, really good thing.
Yeah. No, I think that's one of the things that when they bring in admitted students to Duke for the Blue Devils Days, what they call that now, that if I give the welcome, one of the things that why is Duke special, I speak about the interdisciplinary, because it really is striking to me.
It is.
Across these disciplines, across the various departments, and I mean, Duke's a big place, it's not perfect, but there's an attempt to really work together.
Right.
On
I agree.
whatever it might be, and it just stands out in my mind. What would you say, thinking about Mr. Duke, James B. Duke, what would he and other members of your family, you think, if they saw Duke University today, what would you say what do you think they would think about the university today?
Well, I think that they would be very pleased because, Duke, even though it's gotten bigger, it's not huge. I think they didn't want it to be a huge, enormous university. I think they'd be really happy about that. I think they'd be happy with the way that women are still supposedly equal as men. And I think they'd be happy about all the new different graduate schools that have come in. I think they'd all be very pleased.
I agree, and I think that they would be happy that the nursing school has come back.
True.
Oh.
Very true.
It had gone away?
Yeah.
That was one of Mother's big regrets, that she was on the board when they got rid of the nursing school.
Oh.
But eventually it came back even better than it was.
Okay.
So the way it is now. But I think Mary's right that all the graduate schools, that has contributed so much to the overall university. And I think he'd be very happy about that.
You know, the other thing is that Duke is a beautiful university. And the chapel is always going to be right there. And that was the centerpiece. And then next, we cannot forget the Duke Gardens.
That's right.
The Duke Gardens, and the Duke Gardens, there's near and dear to my heart. I was just there, but I think that the Duke Gardens have meant a lot to Durham. You know, that Duke Durham initiative.
Yes.
It has really meant a lot to everybody around here. Duke is the largest employer, and I just think that
They would be proud of that.
they would be very, very proud of that. Yeah.
Well, I know the chapel and Duke Gardens are two of the top tourist sites in North
As
Carolina.
well they should be.
Right, so it's such a place of beauty,
Oh, it is.
Which is-
It's very peaceful.
very peaceful. Yeah. Do you, I mean, thinking about what they would think and where Duke is today, thinking about, reflecting a little bit backwards now on your time as undergrads, grad students, are there particular professors, subjects, classes, or even extracurricular activities, things that you were involved in as a student that you would say, wow, this really shaped me or shaped my thinking or view of the world?
Well, you think about the pot as a whole, because I was an English major,
Okay.
but I was pre-medical. So that meant I went to school the year round to get all the requirements in. But I would say you get to know the people in the department of your major the best. And Clarence Godis and Smith, but I'm not sure that I would necessarily say that these were people that shaped me as much as they contributed to who I am.
And at that point, when we were at Duke, they had an elementary education major, and that's what I was in.
Okay.
And I agree. It was all my teachers as a whole, the whole thing that meant a lot to me. I could pick out one who's he's gone now, but his name is Mr. Stars, Bill Stars. He taught art, and for some reason he was a good teacher, but he knew how to relate to the students. So I think if you know how to relate to the students, that's half the battle.
Right.
Well, you know, James Bonk, he taught Bonker Street.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, Bonk.
and he was a big tennis player too. So you could say, okay, all those sciences that you took made a difference. Yeah, but you know, they all contributed to the whole.
Yeah.
So, talking about students, you've mentioned it a couple of times, just Duke. Would you say, or what's your perspective on the role of students at Duke and at universities? Do you think there's something special for the student experience coming through Duke compared to maybe some other institutions?
Well, I don't know. I mean, it's a smaller school, so you probably get to know your fellow classmates and upper and lower classmates a lot better than you would at University of Pennsylvania say.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's probably true today because of the programs that are being initiated now. Since when it became all freshmen,
Right.
and there wasn't so much upperclassmen,
Right.
freshman mixed.
Oh,
now
okay,
I think that
okay.
there's a real effort to do that because that was missing.
Yeah, it
We-
was.
Now, when we were there and in our dorms, you had freshmen, sophomore, you had all 4 years.
Oh,
And you were there for 4 years. You got to know them and you bonded. But then with the freshman campus, they bonded with each other, but
Right.
with no one else. And so now there's been an effort with the Quad X to make sure that there's more of an interaction here and that they get to know each other. We'll see how that experiment
You're
goes.
right.
Right,
It'll be
right.
interesting because we have a grandchild coming in September. So I'll be interested to hear, how he feels about all the Quad X and everything.
Right,
Yeah.
right. That new initiative.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask this: the family history that you've shared, your own student kind of journey through here, the legacy of the various family members and others you've named already. What would you say are your hopes for Duke in the next century? I don't think any of us will be here, but what would you say would be your hopes for Duke?
Well, I was saying to Becky in the car, one thing I hope, and this is not a joke, I hope that Duke does not get rid of the Duke Forest. That Duke Forest, of course, was huge initially.
Right.
And then they kind of chopped away at it. And of course, I know that the hurricane came through, but that is to me, it's an integral part of Duke. And I hope that, that might just seem kind of silly, but
No, it's-
on the other hand, it's part of Duke.
I have been keeping up a little bit with the forest, and
Okay.
they have a whole enterprise that they renew the forest, and they do to reduce the deer population, and because the deer just wreak havoc in there. But you're also talking about the fact that there's so many buildings,
Oh, yeah.
and every time you put up a building, you knock down more trees.
Yeah.
Right.
So Mary said, I think we've got enough buildings.
I do. I think we have enough buildings. And the problem is then Duke's going to become bigger and bigger and bigger, and people won't know each other as well, and I don't know.
Well, let's see. I hope that Duke and Durham continue their good relationship because it was not always this way.
No.
And we remember those years. Duke was considered, it might have been the largest employer in the county, but it was separate. It didn't do anything for Durham and so on. And that has really changed. And
Yeah.
Tallman Trask is
Tallman
largely
Trask.
responsible.
He
Yeah,
really did
Tallman.
this wonderful job
Yeah.
getting that over to the board and
But
through.
that was something that was near and dear to Mother's heart, and I think that the original founders would be very happy to know
Yeah.
that Duke is more a part of the region than it has ever been.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the good thing about Duke is that it is a Southern school,
Yeah.
and
It's not an Ivy League. We
It's
don't
not
want to be an
Ivy
Ivy League.
and that's another thing. We hope that they continue not to try to emulate. And my concern is that Duke will cave to, and in some respects it has to because of federal funding, but the whole getting rid of DEI, the diversity, equity, and inclusion business. I'm really concerned about this because look at what's happening across the street at UNC. I mean, they're going after them. And they're linking federal funding to getting rid of DEI. Well, wait a minute. You don't have to call it that, but do it.
Right.
do the same thing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Well, and I agree about that. I mean, Duke's really done a pretty good job of inclusion,
Mm-hmm.
equity. I think, something that interesting that's happened is how did the grad students finally unionize?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
right.
Mm-hmm.
So, and Duke's becoming more with it in that respect.
Mm-hmm.
But I agree it worries me about the federal funding thing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You just mentioned one thing, the Southern. I want to come to it and not. What does that mean? So when you say Southern school, I want it to maintain that, not be the Ivies. What does that mean for you?
People are
I know
still
we're
nice.
geographic.
What?
I said people are still nice.
There's some of that.
Listen, I think there is some of that. Not everybody's nice, but
Right.
I think they make an effort to learn who people are, to learn. I don't know.
Well, it's part of the communication issue.
Yeah.
It's not so big, and it is in a community where you talk to each other, and maybe understand where they're coming from, and then they can understand where you're coming from, and you have more of a relationship there.
Right.
We both went to boarding school in the North.
Yeah.
Okay.
And although those weren't big universities, there was a problem with that. I mean, it wasn't as friendly as a kind of a strange word.
No.
but-
Well, I don't know. I went to a Quaker boarding school, so they were friends.
All right. They were friends.
But I think too that gosh, I've lost my train of thought.
Okay. Well, let me bring up one other thing here.
Oh, I know it was.
We didn't talk about this, but I wanted to mention that one of the things that Mother was so proud of was finally being able to have a statue of Ben Duke on East Campus.
On East.
That was really important because she felt that it was Ben who pushed his brother
That's who it was.
to give money to Duke.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's right. That he was the one who pushed his brother, the brother had the money, most of the money,
Right.
but he had it too. And Ben Duke was very generous to Duke and to organizations all over the place. So he was the one who pushed his brother to do this.
And so that was one of Mother's dreams, that he should be recognized. His father was there, his brother was there, but there was not anything for Ben. And so that was a big deal to get that statue built and placed on East Campus.
Wow. Go ahead.
So this was back a couple of minutes ago, but so I think too that Duke is very lucky to be along with UNC and State. That's a really good combination.
Yeah. Yes,
And we should be able to really help each other out. And the Keenan, Flagler, I mean, there are a lot of things that Duke does with UNC.
Right.
So I think Duke should be proud of that because they're not isolated.
Right.
And they're not isolating themselves. They're in collaboration with other places.
I like that too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you've brought us full circle in many ways, bringing us back to Benjamin Duke and James B. Duke, the family. And we started with the family, and we've come back to the family. And the university, I know as a whole, is so grateful for the legacy of your mother, of your impact and influence on the life of Duke, all of the contributions of the Duke family. I speak on behalf as an employee and as a professor here and dean of the chapel that the gratitude flows towards her family. for all that it continues to do and contribute. So thank you so much for taking the time to share some of your reflections in this centennial year. And hopefully we will connect again. We won't do it 200 years, the anniversary that next, but maybe some other time at some gathering.
Won't be here.
This year. So thank you both for your time.
Thank you for your
Thank
energy.
you.
It was good.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.